from the Salvation Army National Headquarters, this is the Fight for Good podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fight for Good podcast. I'm your host, Lieutenant Colonel Tim Foley. We're recording here again at our national headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia. And with me today is the assistant to the editorial director, Michele Katsaris. Michele.
Hi.
In today's podcast, we will be sharing Michele's interview with first-generation Mexican-American author, U.S. Army veteran, and content creator and very proud mother, Dulce Ruiz. Who is Dulce?
She started on YouTube. So her term is YouTuber, but content creator. And she also runs her own blog, and now she's actually a published and best-selling author.
So you would consider her like an influencer?
Yes.
In a way. How did you come across her?
I actually started following her when I was younger, and I don't really remember when or what year that was, but I was very young. I think I was in high school. And just following her on social media and keeping up with her. And the reason that I liked her is because she's very petite. I think she's 5 foot or something like that, and I'm very petite. So her advertising, what clothes she wears and what brands, that is why I followed her initially, because it's very hard to find clothing for short people.
Well, what was the most intriguing thing that kind of came to you in your interviewing with her?
Just how nice she was. I mean, not that I thought she was going to be mean, but it was, she's probably the biggest influencer that I've interviewed. So I had to go through her managers, and there was a lot of just being able to set up the interview. And I was very nervous, and also halfway through the call, the call dropped, and I was just oh my gosh, they're not going to want to finish the interview. So I was just very nervous, but she was just so easy to talk to, just super nice, very friendly, and just very humble. You can tell that she didn't view herself as this huge influencer, but she loves the fact that she can connect with people. So she's just very authentic and very nice.
Well, we hope our listeners will enjoy this interview, the interview that you've had with her. And the article is titled Growing a Family and Following with Dulce. So here is Dulce Ruiz.
So just to kind of start, go ahead and tell us a bit about yourself, your background. We know that you're on YouTube and a social media influencer. How did that kind of start?
Yeah, so I was born in Mexico. I grew up in Oxnard, California. And after high school, I enlisted in the military, in the U.S. Army. And after I came back from a deployment is when I discovered YouTube, which was back in 2008. And I just fell in love with just connecting with people and other women who loved talking about makeup and beauty. And it just really became a great way for me to share my interest for all of that with other people. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And then also, since you are an author, what inspired you to write about your story, and what was the biggest message that you wanted to share with others?
Well, I got inspired after making a video on YouTube called Draw My Life, and I just shared big major points of my life, like immigrating and the military and that experience. And I guess a lot of people didn't know that about me. And a lot of people were like, you should write a book. And I never thought that I had a story to tell. And It's not until later, now that I'm an adult, that I realized that all the things that happen to us that we don't understand at a young age or any time in our lives somehow define us. Well, not necessarily define us, but they create the story and who we are today. And they have so much to do with who we are today. And in my hopes for writing that book was to inspire other young women out there to not let their life circumstances define who they can be and what they can achieve later on in their life.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great message. I remember that video too.
Yeah.
I remember that was a huge thing at that time. Yeah, that's so great. Now, that our readers know a little bit more about you. So what made you guys decide to do IVF? Did you guys like talk about it beforehand? Was it kind of a last minute decision? How did that come up?
It was always an option for my husband and I. It's just that it was such a big financial and physical and emotional step that we were going to take if we decided to go down that route. But I think one of the best things that came from that is that I finally figured out why I can't have babies, physically can't conceive. But thankfully IVF and the science behind it and my doctor were able to, bridge that block that we had, and now I'm here. So it's been 8 years. We've been waiting a long time, but I feel like there's always hope and there's always a way.
Yeah, definitely. And how has that process gone? Because, it's so different, especially that wasn't really a thing, I feel like, 10, 15 years ago. So it's very different nowadays. How has it gone? And what are some of the hardest and best moments from the process?
It honestly hasn't been that difficult. There's a lot of medication. And before this, I never really liked taking any type of medication. So this was a big deal for me. And I'm taking a lot of it on a daily basis. So I do feel at moments where, I feel a little overwhelmed with medication and my emotions. And, it's very physical. You get a lot of shots that are somewhat painful. But honestly, it's nothing that we women can't handle. And it's definitely worth it because I just think about my baby and the fact that I need to take these medications so my baby can continue to grow and, I can, complete a full-term pregnancy.
Yeah, definitely. So just kind of going off of that, when you and your husband's name is Jesse, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you guys first started dating, was faith like a very important factor in your guys' relationship?
Honestly, I was 18 and he was 21, so we never discussed our faith, our religion at all, which ended up to be sort of an issue when we had Isaac, our 8-year-old son, and it was time to baptize him. We were both raised Catholic, and my dad especially he puts a lot of pressure on us, and he's always like, when are you going to baptize Isaac? Like, he's already getting older. Why haven't you baptized him? And Jesse he's not Catholic, and I'm not Catholic either. So that was like a really big deal for us because, at first I wasn't sure what my religion was. I just grew up Catholic, so I thought, I have to baptize them. But it was an issue because my husband didn't want to baptize them. So I feel like if I could just go back in time, or if I could give advice to any young couples, it would be to discuss your faith and your beliefs and what you plan on doing with your children, because that's a big issue.
Yeah, definitely. But with that, so you grew up in a Catholic family, but at what point in your adult life did you find your new relationship with God, like your own personal one outside of your family?
Oh my gosh, honestly, it's so recent. I've always been on the search for something. And it wasn't about probably like a year ago or a little bit over a year ago that I realized that by being in a religion or, believing what my parents believed and the people around me, I felt like I was in a little box and I had to follow certain rules. And it just didn't sit well with me for a long time. And it wasn't until I had this huge realization that my relationship with God is 100% personal and nobody has to understand it. And I don't have to explain it or validate it or prove it to people. Like, it's very, very personal. And that's why I don't openly talk about it anymore, because I felt like before I was trying to fit in or be accepted by certain religions, and I feel completely different now.
Yeah, definitely. And then any other advice that you'd give to younger people who might be struggling to find their own relationship with God?
Yeah, I would just say to do what feels right for you. I know for me, meditation was a huge thing. And there's religion-based meditation. There's Christian meditations where you can connect more deeply to Jesus. Those are really beautiful. There's many different ways. I just feel like finding quiet time, alone time with your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions and talking to God and cultivating that relationship between you and who you believe in. That's what I would say.
That was Michele Katsaris with Dulce Ruiz. Well, in your interview with her, she shares her IVF journey with her son in a very unique way. How does she do that?
So she actually told me that she lets Isaac, her son, watch YouTube videos, and her husband Jesse answer any questions that he has. He sees that his mom is getting shots every day, and he's super supportive, and he's just based off pictures and videos, obviously, is so cute. And he always tells his mom, think about the baby, and just is very supportive, and just shows that how smart he is too for an 8-year-old to understand this concept as well.
I'm amazed at reading your article and listening to her talk, how transparent she is. And you talked about there's a few layers to get to her because of her popularity. What do you think makes her very interesting to the general public?
I think that the most thing is that she's relatable. I think sometimes we think that influencers or celebrities are unattainable and don't we can't really relate to them. But she is someone who has a huge following and a huge platform, and yet she had struggles getting pregnant for the second time. And that just shows that anyone is human. Anyone, can hit road bumps, but she's also a very positive influence because she found, another way around it. And, she's just stayed true to herself. And like I said, she's very relatable and very authentic.
I think our listeners and readers of the War Cry and the listeners of this podcast are becoming aware that we're trying to be very intentional about exploring all kinds of different subjects. So we brought this subject to the table because it's very important for IVF. Why do you think millennials and maybe Z generation should pay attention to the whole IVF situation?
I think just because it's another way to have a family if that's what you want. I think that science has amazingly caught up, and there are other ways to get pregnant, essentially. And that's important because I think, 10, 20, 30 years ago, it was one way or that's it. There wasn't any other way around it. So I think also with this, you can also have children at a later age as well. That's an amazing process, with the whole freezing of everything process. I think that's an amazing route that it's not you have to be 20 and become a mom. It's you can do your life first and then become a mom when you're ready, if that's your choice.
Well, thank you for interviewing her, running across her, and kind of bringing her forward.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, to read Michele's full interview with Dulce, please check out thewarcry.org. That's going to end this episode of the Fight for Good podcast. Be sure to subscribe to Fight for Good wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to follow us at The War Cry and Peer on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, this has been Fight for Good podcast. God bless you.
Subscribe to Fight for Good wherever you listen to podcasts.